today's show. So welcome everyone to What Keeps You Up at Night, Entrepreneurship During Challenging Times. My name is Colin Weston. I am the community leader for Startup Vancouver, which is one of over 40 chapters of Startup Canada. And Startup Canada is the voice for the over 3.5 million entrepreneurs across this great country of ours. So today we have yet another diverse, eclectic group of guests here that I know all of them. I didn't realize they didn't know each other, and I was so rude in pre-show and not introducing them to each other, which is my bad. So I apologize that to all of our guests here today. So to open things up here today, we have Luke Krueger, and he is the co-founder of ICwhatUC. But I know Luke when he was wearing another hat in his entrepreneurial journey, and that is on the other side of the fence or the desk or whatever the heck we want to call it here, on the investor side with Valhalla Capital and Valhalla Angels. So he is now gone back into the entrepreneurship full on. So excited to hear his story. And we've had many conversations with Dr. Alexandra Greenhill, who's the founder and CEO of CareTeam Technologies, and really excited to hear what not only her and her team has been up to, since the last time we connected over a year ago. And also we have Anna Chan, good friend of ours, founder and CEO of myMomentum, and the way she is keeping all of us entrepreneurs and everybody active, and the way that they have, I call it a pivot. I call it more like recalibration or looking at new opportunities with her business, with myMomentum. So my co-hosts, our co-host, Maryam Mobini, unfortunately has a couple personal things she has to take care of today, so Maryam won't be joining us here today. So it'll be Reza and I that will be steering the ship here today for the show. And with Startup Vancouver, if you're not familiar with us and you want to connect, best way to do that is through social media. We are very active on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Also our LinkedIn community page, very active there, not only with our own events, but also with everything else that's going on in our innovation ecosystem. And we share and support and promote other events that are going on that are of value to all of you entrepreneurs out there, whatever stage you are on your journey. We're also very active on our YouTube channel. So we busted through that 100 subscribers a couple of weeks ago. And if you enjoyed this conversation so much in an hour that you want to see it twice, you can go back there and view it. Or this being our 47th episode, you could also go and see the 46 previous ones times 3 guests each. So we've had over 120, 130 amazing conversations over the last 6 months of doing this show. All right. It's not my phone for a change. I think it was somebody else's. So we want to make this an interactive hour of conversation. So after we have a conversation with our guests, we're going to open it up. So whether on Zoom here in chat or on Facebook, we're live there also, in comments, please leave your questions. Hey, if you're brave enough and not so shy, we'll open up the mic or even turn your video on if you'd like, and you can ask questions directly, or you can phone them in there like someone was just doing there while I was talking away. Very quickly, we are very proud of our sponsor charity, I should say our charity partner, which is jack.org. And jack.org is Canada's only charity that at a grassroots level across the nation supports mental health awareness for young people. And they do that by making them the ambassadors and the advocates for change, to remove that stigma, both in schools and in our community. And we're very proud to say that through the show, we have raised over $1,000 so far for jack.org, and people have the option to donate when they register on Eventbrite. And today someone did donate. So I'm going to be doing my little musical shout out, as I do at the end of today's show. So as I mentioned very quickly here at the end of the show, Reza and I are going to have a chat with Luke and find out what he's been up to with ICwhatUC. And in the middle, I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. Alexandra Greenhill. And to start things off, we're going to have Reza be joined with Anna to talk about all the great things that she and her team is doing with myMomentum. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll turn it over
Hi,
to
Anna.
Reza.
Welcome to the show again. Last time I think we talked about women entrepreneurs. Now we want to get to know you and the amazing stuff you guys are doing at myMomentum. I did a bit of research on the app, and it's I'd rather you tell us about the wellness app and all the amazing stuff you're doing to help us all be making healthy choices. With that, tell us your story and about myMomentum.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me, guys. I'm so excited to be back on this show. So myMomentum is a wellness app. We promote healthy living. I say more from a subjective perspective, not so much on step counts or calories. It's more about the connection that you have with yourself and doing something very small every day, but feeling rewarded on anything that you're doing, as well as the connection to the community that you have. And that community can be a small circle of friends, or it can be a really wide network. And it's just really that connection that drives momentum that's more sustainable. So we really wanted to create something that, just really had a positive impact on people. And and doing it through tech can give a really great.
How does it work in terms of peer-to-peer? Because I like when you said not counting calories and the boring stuff, because yes, it's effective if you do it, but then most people don't do it and give up halfway. So how does your platform work?
Yeah, I did a lot of research on sort of the boring stuff that you mentioned. And I did find, just myself even, you tend to drop off, or you actually feel a little bit unmotivated because you're not smashing out those steps when really you should be sleeping, or you want to be sleeping or eating something else. And so, yeah, myMomentum really gives you an incentive to do little things every day. We'll give you a bite-sized challenge in the app, and you do it and you get points. And with those points, you can exchange those for rewards, which are actually discounted offers that you can't really find anywhere else, to local brands. And we've always had a local focus from day one. And during COVID, it just really resonated with people in the need that we just wanted to support our local community. And with that, we actually developed a one-tap feature in the app that leads to an e-commerce platform, essentially. So every month we curate a really great experience, listening to our community, to what they want. So say you need to boost your mood, or you need, more natural sugar or something like that. We'll curate about 30 rewards for you so that you stay incentivized to live well based on the things that you can either discover or connections, and not motivated through smashing out objective results only.
And how does the app know when to reward the person? Like, do I log in the things I did, or how does it get recorded?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Right now, it's just sort of one flow. Will give you a really cool bite-sized challenge through the content in the app, and you just can say completed, and it's an honor system. And then later on, we're actually working on some really cool innovation with our product team this year, that the more interactions you have with your community, or you want to send out a hug to your community, or you want to refer a friend, you can get points in all those engagements.
Nice. Tell us a little bit about the entrepreneurship side of things. Like, when you came up with this business model, the way you were testing it, were there challenges? Were there like hypotheses that you thought would work and the community told you differently? Like, were there challenges? Walk us through that story.
Yeah, my biggest challenge was that it was more of a personal challenge. And then there's a sort of two big challenges. The first one was I was actually pregnant as soon as I started the project. Definitely not planned, as with, everything in life is never planned. But so I really had a hurdle in the first couple of years, for sure, in the sense that, physical tiredness, and then trying to manage all of it. In other challenge, and that's more product specific or concept related, a lot of people would say, and they still do, I was just on a call today, like, "Ooh, I've never heard of anything like this." And yes, we can be compared to like Carrot Rewards, which is now Optimity, or like traditional straight up e-com, but we're never quite fitting. Like, we're not just e-com, we're not just a rewards app, we're not your step counter. So it is a little bit out of the box concept, or combining different concepts into one. So sometimes it's not easy to catch the concept right away. The other challenge I really had in the beginning was, just bringing that vision to life. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially non-technical founders working in the technical space, could relate to that. I just had so many ideas in my mind and like so much tech injection, and I had no idea what a UX wireframe was. And the idea of any tech stack just went right over my head. But the vision was there. And I think you're just finding the right people to really bring it to life. And when I found those people, it was like my mind just got blown. It just all came to life. And even the brand, like I'm so strong on brand. myMomentum is definitely brand first. Once you find the right person to bring that vision to life, it just takes off, and it's amazing.
I resonate to that a lot, and because I'm a non-technical founder too, and I met somebody who is, and until then I wasn't even thinking about running a startup. But when I met that person, I was like, all my ideas, I can bring them to life.
Yeah,
But
you wonder what you do day to day. You're like, hey, what do I actually do it?
And just like yourself, I'm a brand person, and one of the things I've seen that happen is we love to brand things, and then it loses because we make it look really good. It loses like the core value is wrapped in there, so it's hard to pull it out and see which feature actually people really like. Is it the branding and marketing, or is it the feature inside? By the way, thank you for sharing your story. It's very inspiring for all of us, to see someone like you who pushed through despite the challenges you might have had beyond starting your startup as when you were going through pregnancy, which is something I can't even imagine how hard it must be, because I'm just dealing with one thing. I'm not even in a relationship. I'm just work. And I'm like, how can people do it with a family and, all sorts of things? I don't know how entrepreneurs pull it up, but it's inspiring to hear it. Is there anything, if you look back over the 2-3 years that you've been doing this, is there anything you learned that you would do differently if you go back?
Oh, definitely. Oh, I often try not to look back and say I'd rather do this differently but I mean, okay, there's one. I wish that I was a little bit more plugged into, I mean, this is also a factor of capacity, but plugged into more of the resources for funding available for startups. And I always, like, I went in right away thinking that funding equated to equity financing. And yes, then I got connected to the amazing people at Futurepreneur and BDC, and I got some loan funding, but anything in between, like hiring grants and grant funding, I think it just was like a concept that I just couldn't grasp right away. And there's just so much out there for startups. It doesn't even have to be tech startups. And I'm just learning that now, 5 years in. And I just wish there's so many resources, but I think just like if I could have been walked through that, or if I could have done things differently, I wish that instead of those moments of panic, I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. You're sitting on the, oh my God, we ran out of money. Oh my God, what do I do now? But like, hey, there's a lot of resources that I didn't have to have so many like serious, oh my God moments. Like I'm gonna vomit everywhere because I literally don't know how I'm gonna move on. And like COVID really brought that out, because it was really a moment for me where like, we will not make it. And there was just so much great resources in COVID. And then it brought more attention to how much there were all these resources that I could have tapped into all this time.
I think we had Stephanie Sang on the show. She's the CEO of Granted.ca. I went to one of her events before COVID, and it opened my eyes, because she was saying there's so much grant being allocated. If you're not getting it, you'll be sure your competitor is getting it, because the government is budgeting it and they really want to deploy it in the sector that it was meant for. And she's connected. She knows all these, budgets that come in, and notifies her, clients that you should apply for this. This applies to your business. And I was like, wow, imagine like if you are not connected to such person and you're just clueless that all these funds are available. There's no equity, there's nothing. It's crazy. It's crazy. Yeah. So thank you for bringing that up. That's why we do this show, because we want to connect the community and build I call it social capital because it's an invisible capital that you build through the connections, and you get to be notified of the fund that otherwise you didn't know about, and it changes your business. I want to wrap it up, so we are mindful of time. I want to wrap it up with a question that we ask everybody: what keeps you up at night these days?
Oh, yes, a lot keeps me up at night, I feel like lately. I think it's just really that sort of the rapid iteration of product market fit is where we're at the moment. And I compare it to, because there's so many parallels with my son, like, that first 2-3 years, you're like, oh, I think we're on one nap. Oh, no, we're back to 2. Oh, I think he's okay now walking. No, he just fell on his face. We're not quite there yet. Like I'm just really learning that we're never going to be there. That sort of sometimes keeps me up, where it's like, okay, we found product market fit. No, we didn't. No, we're pretty much there.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really that it's just getting used to the uncertainty and being okay with it, and not having it keep you up at night, because it's just really a long journey.
It's at times it's frustrating too. I've been in that dilemma for a long time. And what helped me, I'm just sharing my one man's point of view. What helped me was customer interviews as opposed to surveys and a bunch of data that way. Real human interview and really listen to what is their life like. And there were stuff that was shared in those interviews that otherwise I wouldn't have known, and that really guided me. So I don't know if that brings any help. So thank you so much for being on the show. I'm gonna pass it to Colin. I think your mic is mute, Colin, or are you?
No, I don't think so. Can you
No,
hear
there
me?
we go.
There we go.
No,
I'm
you
not
had
muted
a
for a change.
silent laugh, so I was like, "Is that a silent?"
Well, I
laugh
didn't want to
or-
interrupt because, of course, then my head would have with a silent laugh would have been on screen, which would have been weird. Well, Anna, I definitely have we have a question for you, or actually, it's really a comment by Michael, one of our big fans of the show. Michael's joined us, I think, more than anybody over the 47 episodes we've done. So, Michael, great to see you again. And he has a question or a comment regarding funding, and you touched on this, Anna, and I've certainly seen this, and Luke has. I believe you've got the New Ventures BC zip on there, if I can read that there.
That's right. Yep,
there we go. And they've got programs like Hire a Student program with their ISI programs, which I think has even been changed a little bit now with COVID, but there are lots of programs out there. But Michael's dilemma here, which is quite common, is that I'm a sole proprietor here, and says last time sole proprietors only qualified for debt that I looked. And he says, of course, best to avoid that unless you have strong cash flow. And Reza could actually talk to that with his story of what he's done with Ovu, with his business of owning 100% of the company. Because what are you doing, Reza? You're out there actually selling product and actually generating revenue.
My customers are funding me.
There we go. That's what you need to do. So Michael, I can definitely empathize with what you're talking about here. Is would be nice to get a grant. It would go a long way to restore faith when faith is lacking, and definitely with entrepreneurship, we do lose that faith sometimes. And what we try to do is start at Vancouver, being that kind of that aggregator, or that hub of just promoting or letting people know about all these resources that are out there. So in our social media feeds, we are quite active of letting people know what type of grants are out there. And it could be what stage you're at. I'm sure Luke can speak to this also. I'm sure Alexandra can speak to it also. But there are all kinds of opportunities. So Anna, maybe you can respond to that. What Michael had put out there in your experience, even though you're not a sole proprietor with myMomentum, but what you've looked at with funding.
Yeah, I think great comment and sort of segue into a question. I really struggled with this in the beginning. I mean, a lot of the funding that we had for myMomentum was self-funded in the first little bit. I was in a fortunate stage, and not all entrepreneurs are in this stage to be able to fund the first year or so, but that quickly came to a point where I didn't have any sources of revenue, as traditional tech startups usually don't monetize right away. We're in very much a deficit and trying to fund our development. And I just didn't have personal capacity. And I think that, like, any networking new to Vancouver and repatriating back to Canada at the moment, because I was living in Asia for like 6 years before. It was just a really tough time to go for equity financing. So I actually defaulted to loans and debt financing. And normally they ask for a strong cash flow history or current cash flow. And what we did was actually a very untraditional method. And I've heard of some startups that have done this. We actually sidestepped our business model and we went offline and did sort of events and other ways to still stay aligned to our values, like building community and supporting local and bringing people together. But we did it much more offline, and we were able to find ways to generate revenue. So we relied on a bit of debt funding after we generated some revenue. And then we started to carve out paths that we could monetize in app to then show traction in app. And it was really only when we pivoted in COVID that I was able to show some traction that we then got investor funding. And I just closed out our first friends and family round with some amazing aligned investors in COVID, being a female founder against all odds, really. And that just wrapped up in December. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a crazy journey for me and funding, but I honestly feel like I don't know where I got the misconception that funding would be one straight path and boom. I also did a little bit of crowdfunding, non-equity, because it really resonated to us and that went well. But yeah, I just find funding to be a wild journey, and that's never straight line.
Yeah,
no one size fits all.
It's kind of like the whole entrepreneurial journey. Well, Anna, thanks for sharing that with us, and Reza, thanks for the interview. As always, engaging with your questions there and following up there. So thank you for that. So yeah, want to turn it over now to our next guest, and that is Dr. Alexandra Greenhill, who is the CEO of CareTeam Technologies. So very interesting here, because when I reached out to Alexandra, your first response was, I don't know if this is quite a right fit, because I don't know if I agree with kind of the premise of the show of what keeps you up at night. So I find this is a really engaging way to start here, because we're always trying to improve and kind of figure things out here. So I'm curious to hear about your take on originally that what you thought that the show was going to be angling at with the name that we have.
Oh, I mean, it's interesting, Colin. And as you know, I'm straightforward with, like, most people will be just polite and say I'm too busy or whatnot. And I was like, yeah, I don't think that's my topic. If you wanted to ask me about a different topic. And then I realized it's the name of your show. And then in our email exchange, I didn't have the sort of time to write it all out. But you actually gave me a lot of you made me think, and you made me think that the kind of people who may be attracted by the question are specifically the ones who perhaps need to be here and hear this, because some of us who have gone through many different ventures know that there's pretty much the very moment in which you need this stress and there's difficulty, you need your sleep, because without the sleep, you can't make the right decisions in order to save the situation. And so the very premise of what keeps you up at night, it should be nothing, because in particularly the moment where everything looks difficult, you should be sleeping really well so you can tackle it with a fresh perspective. But if there are people who are anxious, and we know anxiety causes you to not sleep, maybe that's the right audience to attract to a show and hear more about solutions and options on how do you acquire that Zen-like attitude in order to create that capacity of actually getting the proper sleep you need, just as the anxiety around everything happening in your business or personal life may be at its highest.
And thank you for sharing that perspective and articulating that, because that is certainly what we're trying to articulate on the show, is how are the positive ways that you can get more sleep, that you can. We talk about mental health issues and entrepreneurship all the time on the show, and a lot of the guests that we've had on do focus in that area, in that sector. How do you reduce anxiety, depression, all those issues that as a general populace we struggle with in entrepreneurship, sadly, even in greater numbers and higher percentage than everybody else. So we certainly ask that side of it too. So let's flip it around here. What are you doing with, well, first of all, please tell everybody with CareTeam Technologies of what you're doing. You've been going for a couple of years now, and you are definitely a scaling company, a scale up and a early growth and beyond company. So tell everybody here, what is your business model? What's the value proposition for CareTeam Technologies?
Sure. So I'm a family physician, emergency room doctor, and sort of innovated in the healthcare system now for almost a couple of decades. And sort of we went from paper-based records in the hospital to computers, and then helped computerize family doctors' offices. And a few years ago, I looked at all of that and I said, it hasn't happened yet. And people said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, the rest of my life has been transformed because I now don't have to go to the bank. I can book travel without talking to a travel agent and paying a ridiculous amount of money for advice because I can just sort it out myself. And I can do purchases online, but how come I can't do all of those things around my health and we're still using faxes and phones to manage the most important thing on our personal agenda, but also on our society agenda, because half of our revenues, taxes, insurance pay in the US, it doesn't matter what system you are, about half of it goes towards education and healthcare. And so the aha moment was what's really missing is a connector across. And so you've computerized different systems, but there's still, it's like the Tower of Babel moment where everyone speaks a language or has a tool, but it's not connected to another one in an intelligent way. And so CareTeam is that concept apps, but how do you tie them together in 24 hours so that people know which one to use, which sequence, and what's the right one for them, and they don't have to repeat the information into every app about who they are, and that more importantly, they can start creating some of those social connections that really make the difference in a healthcare episode, whether you have cancer, heart failure, mental health issue, eating disorder, addiction, it doesn't matter. The strongest predictor is, do you have a tribe? Do you have people that you're connected with, both people with the same condition that you can learn from or commiserate with, but also practical help, somebody to drive you places and pick you up and remind you of appointments and cook the right food in your home and, get you off of the couch so you'd exercise and take a walk and just someone to talk to. And so CareTeam is that sort of a organizing principle, glue, if you want, that's meant to connect the community, primary care, specialty care to the patient. And then the patient is the one who chooses who else. Is it their pharmacist? Is it their family, chosen family, friends, whoever they consider to be the key element in their life. And, we've been accused of like everybody wants this, but hey, big government organizations have tried and spent billions in Canada, in the UK, in the US, and didn't get to it. And I think we really try to learn from them and say the top-down approach of you will adopt this platform, sounds a little bit like science fiction, and you are Borg, you will join the collective. And, we as consumers have collectively said, no, I want to choose which app motivates me. Which app do I use, which device? And so it's like, bring your own device to the party, but with CareTeam, you can actually have that continuity, and hopefully this bottom-up approach will be more successful.
Nice. So it sounds to me that even though you're tech enabled here, ultimately it's not a tech solution you're providing, it really is a secure communication solution that you are providing here.
Totally. And it's not, it's a little bit of communication, but it's also planning, because the one big thing about healthcare is that you can mistake activity for progress. And so it feels like you're on the right path because people are sending you left, right, and center for tests and a whole bunch of other things. But in fact, all of these tests will show that everything's okay. And the fundamental issues is you're not getting enough sleep or exercise, or there's a third thing that's wrong that has nothing to do with any of the tests being done. And so the notion of planning, the notion of understanding what is your next best action, but not from the short-term perspective, but the overall perspective across the many diseases that people tend to have, because between genetics and lifestyle, they travel in groups. if you have diabetes, heart disease, stroke, like they all kind of congregate, and you have many different apps and many different tools. And if you simply communicate it, that's not enough. You also need to be able to understand what's the objective. And the objective needs to be medical, but also personal. And so if you have a strong why as a person, you do so much better from any healthcare condition. I want to see my kids graduate. I want to see my project, like whatever it is that matters to you as a person matters as well.
Nice, nice. And just curious to hear, so I'm teaching a course to entrepreneurship students right now, and I've got them during COVID times to try to find their customers, and talk about, well, you have buyers and you have users and you have gatekeepers, and sometimes they can all be the same person, or they can be completely different personas and groups. So tell us a bit for CareTeam Technologies, who are those different groups for you, those different segments, as far as who are your actual customers, who are your users, and who are the facilitators and channel partners that you have to make all the good things happen?
Oh, totally. And so, I mean, this is where I can just emphasize what Anna was saying earlier, and I'm sure what Luke would say after me too, which is like the ecosystem matters, and you shouldn't try and attempt to sort of do all of this by yourself. And so we've been part of a couple of accelerators like the Creative Destruction Lab and the BC Tech Scale-Up program called Hypergrowth, because even though I have so much experience in that space, and so do my co-founders, the challenge we're tackling is messy and complicated and difficult, because essentially no one's done anything that scales in healthcare. People have done that for other industries like finance and taxi industry and Airbnb and whatnot. But in healthcare, there's such a perception that only a local solution would work, when in fact, we're all human. We have the same needs and characteristics, and somebody pays, someone's sick, someone's taking care of them. And those things are constant and they should be common. And so user-wise, we have the same users. It's the clinicians, the patients, the family members, the administrators who need to make a decision on a population level as to like, how is all of this working? Buying wise, this is different, because literally every hospital, every region has a completely different set of stated priorities, real priorities. You know, they may say things like, you know, community care matters, but all of the funding goes to the emergency room. And I came from the emergency room. You can't solve the issues of Emerge by focusing on Emerge. But new people arrive full of good intentions. They don't know what hasn't worked before. And we see that repeating of the wheel. And even with COVID, we see people trying to run faster instead of using, you know, it's the, I want a faster horse. And you're like, but we have not just the car, we've built you a helicopter, and like, and they're like, yeah, I'll figure that out later. Like I need to get there. And so it's that sort of a battle of how do you change a set of customs and mindsets. And I've done this before. I know it's doable. And the process and method is, to the point that Reza made, is just talk to people. It's not about surveys, because surveys will tell you very little if you're trying to do something very innovative.
Nice, nice. I'm very curious to hear about the scalability part. You did mention here in British Columbia, of course, with every single health region that we have. And I think there's at least half a dozen or so. You probably know the number. I don't know how many there are.
We went down from 33 to 6, but one is provincial.
There we go, to 6. So you've got your own challenges there. And then if you decide to scale and branch out into other provinces, and then even more, let's say at the US market that's 10 times our size, but also a private system as compared to a public one. Do you see what do you see as your 2, 5, or 10-year vision for CareTeam? Is it to focus? Well, why don't you tell us? Is there a chance to actually make this universal, or is that are there too many variables that make it too bespoke for you to actually handle that, too high touch?
I mean, entrepreneurs need to do their homework. And so part of, you know, like last year before COVID struck, and I'm kind of grateful for COVID, because for that little reason, which is no more travel, I think I did 46 international trips to like literally go and see for myself, has anyone invented this in China and Europe, and like, you know, who else is doing this? International meetings, interviewing stakeholders to say, do you have these issues? How would you solve them? Would this solution work? Like that's the order of questions, with very open-ended, as opposed to saying, I have a hammer, do you need this? It's like, what problems do you have? And everyone's reached the same issue, sort of a combination of tools. Think about your life before the smartphone. You used to have Walkman, pager, cell phone, like photo camera. And then somebody said, what's the minimum set of tools that should be in one package, and then access to the App Store? And that's what we're trying to do with CareTeam. And strangely enough, and this is sort of frustrating sometimes, is you're more popular elsewhere than you are at home. And so our first hospitals were actually Ontario based. We get a phone call back from American hospitals faster than anyone else here in BC. We have some projects which are fantastic with our partner here at Providence Health. And so hopefully some British Columbians are going to see the outcomes of our research and work, but in healthcare in particular, going abroad first is usually the norm. We're way more popular elsewhere. While people here like, let's buy something American that must be good enough, better than. And so a lot of the software that we've bought for Canadian hospitals are American made, and they don't quite work. If you Google the names and delay and cost of implementation, all of the big softwares that we use in Canadian hospitals have billions of dollars over budget, and yet we don't want to spend $100,000 on the Canadian-made innovation.
Yeah. So sounds like you're suffering that classic Canadian dilemma, or not even a dilemma, but what we inferiority complex, I guess you can say, where whether you're a band, whether you're, The Weeknd or Drake or whoever, it's like almost like if you go international and they like you, it's like, and as Canadians, like, well, I guess they're okay. Maybe we can like them too, right? It's like, so maybe you're the Drake of healthcare. Maybe that's I don't know if I want to be that anyway. just spitballing here.
Drake is cool, and he's got such a positive message for so many young people nowadays that it's really important to have diverse perspectives. But you're absolutely right. Is we tend to be regarded higher elsewhere. For some reason, we have this reflex that Canadian made must mean shoddy. But the Supercluster initiative we're part of is hopefully going to change this. It's a federal government next level beyond the Center of Excellence. It's a challenge that basically helped us scale faster, because it was what kind of issues companies like TELUS, Change Healthcare, Providence, like big organizations can't solve on their own. And you can access their funding only if you, big organization, bring along 2 or 3 or 4 smaller companies and co-create a solution that leverages everything you've done. And so one of the projects that I'm most excited about is cancer diagnosis moved away from 36 weeks on average to a week for skin cancer. Another one is preventing opioid addiction at the source. And so unfortunately, 10% of people going through surgery will have a painkiller addiction. We know which 10%, but by combining our technologies with 3 other ones and the know-how of the surgeons and anesthesiologists at St. Paul's, we're creating a protocol that will help to say who's the patient, what's the procedure, what happens in the 2 to 4 weeks. So we can actually create a learning system that tells you, oh, this person needs extra attention and support, because otherwise they'll become part of the statistic of the war on opioids. And that, to me, is breakthroughs that are impossible without the supercluster kind of funding.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I know Reza's been looking, he's got his hand up there. He's been waiting to jump in here. Reza, you had a question or a comment?
I just want to know, Doc, that because our system is not rewarding efficiency, and abroad systems are rewarding efficiency better because say they are more attractive. I feel like your program brings efficiency and a 60 loop on the data, which to non-health people, it seems like, why hasn't been done? Every other startup, they have full data, they have 360, view of the customer, but then the healthcare system is a big slow vehicle, it seems.
Well, it is. And I mean, there's really good reasons why we're slow to adopt, which is you want to protect people. You can't have the fast type of mentality of usual startups. But, some of that has become slightly sclerotic, and which is not a good thing. Like sclerosis is the cause of heart attacks. And like, you don't want the healthcare system to be that rigid to innovation. We innovate a lot in healthcare around research, around treatment for diseases and procedures and other things. We don't have reflex of applying that to technology, the budget for technology in healthcare is like 2%. And you're like, for banks, it's 14%, most businesses somewhere around 5 to 8. And so how could you have a healthcare system where privacy and security requirements invest only 2 to 3% of their budgets in IT? And so that's one sort of concrete one. The question about abroad is every single system is struggling. So I was invited by the Swedish government to go talk to them about innovation. And somehow we have fooled the world that Canada has got it figured out. So their question was, like, how do you have such an amazing system? And I don't. My patients with mental health have to wait 9 to 12 months. I still practice. 9 to 12 month wait to see a psychiatrist, which is absurd. But if you have a heart attack or cancer, you're probably going to get through the system fairly fast, which is great. But what about all of these sort of marginalized conditions like eating disorders? But 10% of people have them. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. And we have a partner in Ontario called Body Brave that's going to bring this national program now because of COVID, and telehealth has exploded. But no one has figured it out. And a lot of it has to do with it's so fragmented. Everyone's in charge of a tiny little piece. There isn't an organization that kind of looks at the whole. And we don't have a system. We have a publicly funded insurance scheme, but most of the delivery is actually still private, or it's done by independent organizations that have funding. And so, most of your family specialists run their own practice like a small business. And, the fragmentation has been the biggest challenge from what we see. And that's what we're trying to solve with CareTeam.
Doctor, what you're pointing out, I've experienced it firsthand, because my mom got diagnosed with cancer 8 months too late, and the tumor was too big, and then she passed away. And then my brother had schizophrenia. I was the caretaker of him, and I had to really explain to doctors, his situation. It needs to be, he needs to be taken care of. And every time back to the loop. Like I try to. We hospitalized him 10 times in 1 year. That's how much of a back and forth. And they were like, he's good, go home, because they needed a bed, and everybody's incentive was different. And then the system as a whole wasn't working. Everybody was just looking at their own incentive and what they had to follow the procedure. So there is, like, it's funny how you say from outside we're doing amazing, but when you go inside, where you're dealing with these issues, you really find the inefficiencies everywhere. And
yeah, it's
thank
like
you for what you're
that
doing.
game
I
of
hope
snakes and ladders. It's yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. Thank you for what you're doing. I really hope you guys make a breakthrough, because unless people like you give it a shot, nobody else is daring to actually make a change. And we need people like you to go in there and make the change happen.
Thanks, Reza. I mean, I've seen this, like every individual moment is okay, but because they're not connected, the whole thing is not okay. And it's super difficult. And, acknowledgement like the one I got from Startup Canada helps, because until people started saying like, hey, this is worthwhile, we couldn't get the kind of velocity and being heard in order to get the message out. But, it's really helped to have that recognition. And we hear the stories. Like, that's what motivates me, is like hearing the fact that you had to go through this helps me, sort of energizes me to say, okay, I know I'm going to hear so many more no's than yeses, and people who say, oh, why fix it? And you're like, because if they're like, it's good enough. And you're like, good enough is not good enough. It has to get better.
Well, this conversation could keep going and going here. I can feel it building here, but we do want to be respectful of time here, and we still have Luke to chat with. I did fail to mention at the top of the show, yes, Dr. Greenhill was the recipient of the Startup Canada Entrepreneur of the Year Award. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I can't quite remember when that was. 2 years ago. So congratulations on that. Very well earned, and I know that you support your team. It does take a village for what you're doing and continue to do as your village grows with your team as you scale. So to kind of double down on what Reza said, I am so grateful for the work that you're doing to make people's lives better and the families around them, for better outcomes, for faster outcomes. And just on that health side here, that we've got Anna on the preventative side. She's part of that ounce of prevention here, and you're helping provide that pound of cure too. So combined there. Now we're going to see what Luke is adding there. Maybe there's some connection here, but I'll let him decide that. So thank you very much again, Dr. Greenhill, for joining us here today and taking the time, because I really enjoyed this conversation.
You're welcome, Colin and Reza and everyone. And I'm excited for Luke, because if you can solve some of my practical things around the house, then I have more time to do the innovative work that I'm doing. So how is that for connection?
Nice, good segue. You should be hosting this show. You got this. You don't need us anymore. Doing a great job. Good bridge there. Way to do that. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Luke Krueger for a couple of years when he was wearing another hat as an investor. And as he'll have to tell me, I don't know if he was actually a partner, but definitely working the leadership level and ownership level with Valhalla Capital and Valhalla Angels. So we had met through a lot of events. Himself, just like our other two fabulous guests, well, actually all 5 people on the show, all of us are community builders in one way or the other, because we understand the value of that. I love what Reza actually put it with the social capital, that invisible power of the social capital, which is so true. And that connectivity just introduces you to more and more amazing humans. And we've got some of them on the show today, and Luke is no exception to that. So Luke, welcome to the show, and tell us what you've been working on, which started up just before COVID. And looking at what you have here, it looks like you may have an opportunity that's really propelling you forward. So hey, welcome to the show, and tell us a bit about what you've been working on as a founder here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Colin. I think one of the things that we often talk about is we talk about this community as if it's very binary, where you're either on the founder side or you're on the funder side, and there's not a lot of crossover. The truth is I'm still on both. I still angel invest. I think that that's really important. This is my 4th venture. I was one of the partners in Valhalla Capital before I helped get that going. But this problem, I think, is a very important one to solve that we're working on right now. And I still believe that it's really important to support entrepreneurs, which is why I've got, completely accidentally the BC New Ventures fleece on here, because I am one of the judges in that competition as well. So these things are by no means binary. In terms of our company now, what we're working on is we are a video work platform. We had a core thesis at the very beginning that there's apps and downloads are really hard. And there's a lot of problems that are happening in the world, whether they're sales, field service, this kind of problem, in-home problems, and they can be solved really quickly using the smartphone and the camera. As it turns out, we've all discovered over the last 12 months that a whole lot of things that we didn't think could be done over video actually can be. And then we've layered in some really interesting technology utilizing augmented reality in order to help people solve their own problems in homes. And I could give you a couple of examples of that, but all you need to do is take a look on YouTube channels. There are millions and millions of views of DIY videos, because the alternative, which is you call your company, you wait on hold, eventually they dispatch a technician to your house who inevitably shows up late for the appointment, which is next Tuesday, is so frustrating and so bad that people actually want to solve this problem by looking at things like YouTube videos. And so this is kind of the problem that our technology is addressing. And so far we've done really, really well during COVID. Also reducing the amount of in-person interaction with people, as it turns out, also works during a pandemic.
Yes, that it certainly does. Well, I love stories. I love case studies. So perhaps you can give us one just to provide some context here with ICwhatUC.
Yeah.
Give us a business case.
I'd love to. So the reason that my co-founders and I actually started this company is within a very short period of time, we all had a very similar in-home service experience that was frustrating. And so probably everybody on this Zoom call and everybody listening's had a similar one. So something goes wrong in your house, whether it's an appliance or something like that, maybe a cable box, maybe your Wi-Fi router or something like that. You call an 800 number, you get put on hold, you wait for an hour or so, eventually you talk to somebody and they're like, well, did you try resetting it? Did you try plugging it or unplugging it and plugging it back in? And that's about the extent of the help they can give you over the phone. And then they're like, okay, Colin, next Thursday, what are you doing between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m.? Oh, good. You can stay home all day and you've got nothing else to do. So then you sit at home and you wait for this person. Inevitably, they're late. And then they show up and they're like, oh, actually, it was just this. All you needed to do was fill in the blank. And it's really a simple 5-minute fix. And so what we found in our research is that it's really a Pareto principle, that about 80% of in-home issues are solved in under 10 minutes. And so we got to thinking, well, how can we do this, across a bunch of service providers and do it relatively easily? And so we started with a core thesis that augmented reality was going to play a role in this, and that we were going to have to do it outside of an app, because probably most founders who have tried to get downloads have found out that it is very, very difficult to get new downloads. And in particular, if you think about, it's TELUS, it's Shaw, your cable service provider, whoever, the chances of in a B2C interaction, you to go download a new app in order to get service one time is extremely unlikely. And so the way that our platform works is that we send out a customized SMS. So I can say, Luke from ICwhatUC is waiting to help. Colin, you get a customized link sent to your device. You click on that link and we ask to access your camera and your browser, and you're placed into a video call. In that video call, we're recording the whole thing. And I have augmented reality markup functions where I can draw on your screen in real time over your browser. And we can walk through not all, but a good number of the problems that you would have in your house, and we'd be able to fix it. And so what we found with our customers is that we can resolve almost 80% of issues in about 8 minutes. And that for us as customers solves a real pain point, but then also on the business side, who is our customer, their trips are on average $350 per truck roll is the language that they use. And so those are really expensive. And then to the extent that we can cut those down, reduce GHGs, take trucks off the road, all of that kind of stuff, and resolve problems faster, I think there's a lot of wins the whole way around.
Nice, nice. Well, you know what? I've been part of one of your Valhalla base camps a couple of years ago. And of course, you were grinding me as far as total accessible market, as far as who are your customers, what's your price point, how do you make money? And to the point of you almost made me cry as we kind of work through that,
Unintentional.
Suffer through that. So I'm going to flip the script here and ask you. So how does ICwhatUC, how do you make money? So what is your revenue model here with the business?
Yeah, so my customers are primarily utility companies and field service. So some of the companies we've talked about. The other big one that kind of surprised us is home builders. And so in particular, home warranty programs. Typically the model would be something goes wrong in my new home. They're going to send somebody to my house to assess the problem and determine whether it's eligible. And surprise, surprise, they're incented to not cover it. Then they're going to send somebody to my house to fix it. And on top of that, in 25% of cases, they're going to have to come back a third time because they haven't brought the right equipment, material, whatever it is. And so with our platform, they're able to do that initial assessment, triage whether the issue's legitimate, and solve that issue on the first time. So we're taking 2.25 trips down to less than 1. And so that's pretty significant. So we do home builders, utilities, and field service companies. As it turns out, those are some pretty big markets.
Yeah, no doubt. So with your market, when you talked about at the top of the show, you're growing. It sounds like the number of staff. Why don't you talk about that? How big is your team as you scale up, and where are you seeing most of your customers? Are you sticking to the British Columbia market, or is it across Canada? Well, tell us about that. So tell us about your market penetration, and also about your team.
Yeah, so we've been engaged with about 60% of major utilities across Canada. And actually, to Dr. Greenhill's point earlier, we're actually more popular abroad than we are in Canada. Which is funny to me because, as it turns out, Canada is pretty big, and you would think that people would want to cut down on those very long trips. But interestingly, we are getting a lot more traction in the US. So US home builders, US utilities. Some of you might have seen Texas in the news recently. There's a lot of problems that we can help solve with homeowners there who have not been familiar with winterizing their homes. Some of us in Canada can, or maybe parts of Canada can relate to that. But yeah, we have been selling primarily in the US.
Got it.
Our growth, I will say the other part of your question was on growth. This time last year, it was just myself and my co-founders. We're at about 15 people now, and we have another 8 positions or so open. So we're hiring and scaling pretty rapidly. It is a very difficult thing. The title of this show is What Keeps You Up at Night? Well, what is the right timing to, when you're adding customers and you're adding staff, and like, what is the right threshold for adding people at the right time and having them, onboarded and trained up in order for them to be able to handle your customers as you scale. And it's a really difficult balance to strike.
Look,
Right.
what is the right threshold? Did you find the answer? Because I'm trying to find the answer.
I certainly don't. Reza, you probably have as many right answers as I do. I don't know the answer. You make a best guess, you project. Colin, as you know from having taken our Basecamp course, we always talk about projections, and the only thing you know for sure about them is that they'll be wrong. So it's a best guess. Hopefully on your first handful of customers, you can figure out some models that help you figure out your staffing. And so you try to evaluate off of your first couple of customers and hire based off of them as a template. And that's probably about the best you can do until you're a bit more mature.
Great.
Luke,
I have lots more questions, but Reza, jump in here and keep going.
I'm very curious on this. It seems like, so you've been an angel investor. You are an angel investor.
Still am,
with
yes.
With this project, what resonates to me, that right away I see that business model that can bootstrap. That's what attracted to my business model. I was like, I don't have to wait for an investor. I can just run with it. Did you guys do that, or did you still get funding?
Yeah, initially we did bootstrap. So the first version of our product, our MVP, if you will, we paid for, my co-founders and I. And then we got very lucky. Our first customer was a utility company in Alberta called ATCO. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, so we got very lucky with them as a first customer. They've done over 5,000 calls on our platform and really been one of our heavier users. So we got very lucky. And then as soon as that happened, then we followed with a second multinational customer called Brookfield. So many of you know them. And so we got very lucky early on with those first couple of customers, and then starting to open the floodgates on venture capital was relatively easy. It's never easy. It's, raising funds is a 6-month process. And it's going to involve tons of ups and downs and stuff that we've talked about on the show already. But yeah, it's a challenge, but we got very lucky early on.
Nice.
See, Dr. Greenhill has a question here.
It's a burning thing. I just people say well, you got lucky. And so part of it is yes and no. And part of it is the perception that other people have is that it's random. But in my experience, it isn't. You didn't go after a whole bunch of mom and pop local people that even if they said yes, that wouldn't have gone anywhere to the flywheel going. And you weren't afraid of calling some of those bigger names. And I find that a lot of times when I advise entrepreneurs, they're like, well, I'm going to start with somebody I know because, that phone call. And you're like, well, the worst thing that can happen if we reach out to this multimedia national giant thing is they'll say no. But at least you tried. And if they say yes, imagine how wonderful this could be. And so we seem as a nation to be more concerned about making those phone calls. And in San Francisco, that's the first place they go. They have no qualifications, no experience, no idea, and they're straight to the top person on the list. So I love the fact that you went after the multinationals, but and hopefully people don't see that as luck, but they also see it as just, you took a chance. You took the opportunity.
Yeah, you're right. Dr. Greenhill, I totally agree with you. One of the things that we as Canadians measure too often is top 10 finishes and not gold medals. And I think we ought to be a little more aggressive. And on your point, I think some of it is luck in the sense that we're in Canada and there's a lot of things available to us that aren't available to founders in other countries. But I don't know what the mix is. Maybe it's 50-50, but you absolutely still have to do the work. And it is hard and it's challenging and it involves hours. So it's a little bit of both. But certainly you still have to do the work and be positioning yourself and your product and, to be successful.
And also, I know Luke is just being so Canadian, just being so humble about your success, because because you're a guy that expresses gratitude just like everybody on this panel does. I know you all personally, and I know you all do that. So Luca, I know you're also just you don't have that type of ego that yeah, we deserve that, but it's kind of
Well,
they're lucky to have us type of thing. It's kind of part of who you are, which is great.
The other part of my backstory that you didn't mention, Colin, is that this is my 4th go around, and I've failed before, and so you tend to learn a few things when that happens.
There you go. Anna, you have a question or a comment?
Hey, Luke, I had a quick question. Do you see that there were any, I don't want to say advantages, but times where you felt in any funding conversations being on the other side, if you will, has helped a lot? And because I think that for first-time entrepreneurs or any entrepreneurs that don't have finance backgrounds, that's always a really tough sort of like, yeah, when you get to like negotiations or even just talking about anything to do with the capital structure, it's always like, yeah, a lot to wrap your head around. And yeah, any times where you felt that was, hey, like, this is awesome that I came from this background.
Without a doubt, it was an advantage for a couple of reasons. So first was, knowing what investors are looking for, and having been on that side of the conversation, the closed door conversations that founders often, don't get to be a part of. Part of it was network. So knowing who to approach and sort of what their role is in the ecosystem and where they play, what size checks they write, to whom, these types of things. And then the third one is having raised capital before is a definite advantage. Having knowing what a data room is, what the metrics are that are going to be asked of you, all of this type of stuff, it is such a huge advantage. What's really nice about shows like this, podcasts, Medium, tons of resources are out there and available. So this stuff is there. But to your point, there's a difference between, having lived it and then, reading the theory or listening to people talk about the theory of it. It is a different position. As the three of us, well, all of us know, being in that hot seat and having those questions asked of you, and having your company really put on under the microscope is a different dynamic. It's one thing to read about, it's a different thing to live it.
Awesome. I wonder if that's something where we could really encourage, should people be in a position to also invest and quote unquote, not play both sides, but to really close that gap, like you were saying. That's something that's really interesting, because a lot of people don't even consider they can do that. Like they don't, they always think like, I'm either this or I'm that, or I'm only on the founder side. There's no way I can be in both, right? Or yeah, so it's really cool that you led with that as part of your conversation.
Well, and Colin knows one of my favorite exercises to do is to take an honest look at your own company and say, if I were investing, would I write a check to this company? And for a lot of founders, the honest answer is they wouldn't. And then it starts to ask or prompt a number of really uncomfortable questions. Well, why wouldn't I? What is the risk profile that I'm asking somebody else to take? And if you wouldn't ask somebody else to take that, or if you wouldn't take that risk, why would you ask somebody else to, kind of idea? So it is a good exercise to, at least even in concept, play both sides.
I feel this conversation is kind of getting some momentum, pardon the pun there, Anna, but it's really starting to warm up. But we do want to be respectful of everybody's time here. We are a little bit past the top of the hour. So why don't we wrap it up there? A couple things first. Anna, I want to open it to you. I believe you have an event tonight. So why don't you tell our audience here about your event, which I will be happy through Startup Vancouver to promote later this afternoon. So what do you have going on this evening?
Yes, thank you so much for that mention, Colin. It's actually a Pavilion Inspire and Connect event, which we are helping to promote, but we did help them to create the series. So Pavilion is a co-work space. They are located in 2 locations in Mount Pleasant, and they're doing a virtual event on Zoom. And for some reason, I can't remember the exact time. I'm so sorry. I'm going to just drop this in the chat right now. It's either 6:30 or 7 because they did change it on me, and I'm I was frantically just searching for it right now, but essentially we're creating a space virtually where entrepreneurs can come together, but listen to an entrepreneurial story as well. And the founder of Fable will be speaking tonight. And yeah, there's some great connections, and it's just a circle of like-minded people, much like today, where we share journeys, successes, failures, and everything in between.
Nice. Sadly, I'm double booked for tonight's, but please invite me again, and I'll do my best to actually make the next one, because I have been to your events back in person, and they are amazing. They are an experience, and the connectivity there is amazing. So as we wrap up here, before I sing, to Reza, most people don't know Reza with Ovu, that we met over a year ago. He did this amazing thing, if you want to look at his marketing, but it was so sincere and so amazing, of 100 events in 100 days. And Reza, I believe, kind of, not to say it's COVID inspired, but let's say within the confines of COVID, I believe you're ready to do version 2.0 of that. Tell us what you are going to be launching very soon, my friend.
Yeah, last year I did it because I was starting a new business, Ovu, and I had no connection in the business community. And I was like, how is that possible? I've been in Canada for 12 years and I don't know anyone, and I felt very lonely. So I wanted to put myself out there, and it did wonders. Like the people I met, the way it affected my business, it just did amazing things for me over the past year. And I want to do it again. And I got introduced to this app called Clubhouse, which a lot of people go on Clubhouse and they open rooms and conversation and events. So we brainstormed at Ovu with the team. I want to run 100 days. We call it 100 Days to Connect. It's going to be 100 days of rooms on Clubhouse at 6 p.m. PST starting next week. If you are on Clubhouse, follow Reza V. You'll know about them. And different topics, different speakers, and we want to grow the connection together.
Love it. Good stuff. Other thing I did want to mention quickly here is both myself and Reza and Maryam have decided, since we've got all kinds of other things that are also taking off in our lives with the many balls we're juggling and all the hats that we wear, that everyone on the show knows what that's like, that we're going to be taking a couple weeks off with the show here. And like we did in the fall before we came back, we'll recalibrate, reimagine the show, get feedback also, and maybe even the name or even the format of what we're doing. So like I said, I think we all need a little bit of a break, because also we need to take care of ourselves also. So we don't want to be living that sad irony that we're creating this weekly event here in order to reduce everybody's anxiety, and we're getting burnt out doing it. So you know what, we're listening to ourselves here. We're going to take a little bit of time off, a little pause. I want to mention also, with Startup Vancouver, as part of our Can Startup Stories speaker events, we will be running our 15th, our 6th virtual one. So on March 17th, it'll be the third time we are hosting Celebrating Women Entrepreneurs. So 5 diverse stories, amazing women entrepreneurs, telling their story any way that they want to tell it. So we are going to start promoting that in the next couple of days. It's free to attend. So hopefully lots of people join us for that. So before I have Reza end the show here today, as I stated or threatened, depends on how you want to look at it, I'm going to do my little thing as a way to thank the wonderful person who has donated to jack.org today. And it goes something like this. Nice donation by you. Jack.org says, thank you. You are awesome to Sharvad. Nice donation by you. There we go. There it is. For better, for worse. Colin. Oh, I thank you, Luke. So Reza, my friend, why don't you end the show for today?
Awesome show as always. I wish I could say next Tuesday we are back for another show, but we're gonna take a break. It's been a wonderful 40-some weeks during COVID that I've been doing this show, and thank you, Colin, for hosting it. And we're gonna come back again at some point, maybe different title. So Dr. Greenhill is not gonna have an issue with the title. We're gonna have something more attractive. We're gonna do some exciting stuff. Absolutely. That's all. Thank you for being here. Take care.
There we go.
Bye.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.